Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode, a Ramadan special of Ask Huda. I'm your host Jamil Rashid. We have with the Sheikh Asim bin Luqman al-Hakim. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
As you know, we've been requesting you to send your emails and to telephone us. Our telephone number again, country code 202 8555 248 and 8555 249. Our email address is ask@huda.tv. We've had some emails asking when are emails going to be answered, when are they going to be replied to. Just to clarify something to inshallah, in the next couple of days the emails will be replied to. We have a backlog, but inshallah we're working through those. So if you can stay with us, Jazakallah khair. Sheikh, we want to go through some of the questions yesterday. Our first question was from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where the brother asked, my wife and myself, we're not together at the present moment, but she wants to travel with our children, one's 6 months old, one's 2 years. Is this permissible?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man ihtada bihuda. Amma ba'd, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam answered this question for us by telling us that it is not permissible for a woman that believes in Allah and the Day of Judgment to travel without a mahram. And mahram means a person that she cannot permanently marry, with exception, of course, of her husband. But this means that the father, a son, a brother, an uncle, a son-in-law, a father-in-law, all of these are considered to be permanent mahrams. So she must travel with one of them. And the mahram has to be a person who has reached the age of puberty. So if a child is 10 years old, would not suffice, would not do. So she has to travel with a mahram.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Second question was from Sister Sarah from Saudi Arabia as well, and she asked about after taking a bath, can she wear bath lotion, whether it's scented or not? I'm not sure.
I think that she's referring to doing that while fasting.
Okay. Because
this is the only situation I could think of that may prompt this question. And the answer is yes, it's okay for a person who's fasting to wear body lotion, the sister, and as long as no stranger would find this scent of her. But if she takes a bath and puts the body lotion and then she goes to the market or goes outside and she passes by strange men who would find this scent, no, this is a major sin. And she is not allowed to do this. The Prophet ﷺ told us in an authentic hadith that any woman puts a perfume and goes out passing by men that find this scent, this odor, then she is considered at the side of Allah as an adulteress. So it is a major sin. Women are not allowed to wear perfume when they go out. They are allowed to wear perfume when they're in their houses or when they're visiting someone, providing that when they go out, this scent or this perfume is not smelled.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. We had a couple of questions from Farid from Saudi Arabia, and his first question was regarding land. He's speaking about a friend of his who bought some land. The deed, he said, was on paper. He hasn't seen the physical land. He doesn't know if it exists. He wanted to know some details on zakah and about the land.
First of all, before you buy or sell anything, you have to have knowledge of the verses of the Quran and the hadiths that govern this issue. Umar ibn Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, used to go to the market and look into those who are buying and selling, and whoever did not possess the proper knowledge, he used to beat them with a stick. He was the ruler, telling them, do not come and buy and sell in our market without knowledge, because then you may fall into riba. You may do transactions that are forbidden in Islam. And this is the reason I said this. The brother said that he bought a land and he's not sure if it exists or not. This is a form of transaction that is forbidden. You cannot buy something you're not aware of its existence, in the sense that if I come to you and say, listen, I'll sell you one fish, a catfish, that is 5 kilograms of weight, and it's in this sea or in this ocean. Says, okay, here's 5 pounds. Okay, you go and collect your fish. I'm selling something that I'm unable to deliver, and you're buying something that you're not able to get. This is not acceptable in Islam. In Islam, it's not acceptable to sell something that is unknown. For example, I come to you and tell you, I'm going to sell you what's in my pocket for $10. How about that? Said, well, $10, I can spare that. It might be something that is worth $5,000. It might be something that does not have any value.
It has to be clear, has to be stated.
It has to be clear. So to buy a land and you're not sure of its existence, this is not permissible. You don't have to physically see it, but if there's a certificate saying that there is a land, piece number 76, in the left corner of this area, and you know that there are diagrams and things that proves this land is yours, then this is okay. You don't have to physically stand on it or see it. But as in some cases, in some countries, they sell things they don't own. And you say, okay, I'm going to buy a piece of land in the desert, in the Mojave Desert, for example. Where is that? I don't know. But there might be a diamond mine in it. Maybe. So it's peanuts. I'm just paying 500 or 1,000 reals or dollars or whatever. This is not permissible. Now, does he have to pay zakah for that? If it is something that is often sold and bought, meaning that you bought this land to sell it in a week time with the proper right price, and then buy another one to sell it in as an investment, then yes, you have to pay zakah for that. But if you're buying it as a long-term investment, or as a security to your children, or if you want to build a house on it, or for any other reason other than investing and selling and buying, then you don't have to pay zakah for that.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. We have 2 calls. And after these 2 calls, inshallah, I'll ask the viewers just to hold your calls for the meanwhile, and you can ask our studio to hold the calls. We're going to try to go through all of these questions before we take any other calls, and we don't want to keep you holding. So we're going to take Fatima from Oman. Fatima, you're live on Ask Huda. Your question, please. Fatima, you with us?
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Your question, sister.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I have 2 questions. Hello.
Hello, yes, your question, please, sister.
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Yes.
One is, what's the best istighfar you can make in the month of Ramadan? Hello.
Hello, yes, sister, yeah.
Yeah, I want that dua in Arabic.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 2 is, what are the signs of Laylatul Qadr night?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, sister. Okay, we have with us Bara from United Arab Emirates. Bara, are you with us? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Okay, could I have your questions, please, brother?
Yeah, my question is, how legal is to use a credit card? You know,
Okay.
if even they give you a 50 days grace period, but we are using the money, which is bank's money, which may be interest, means it's a money which is from the bank we are using for 50 days. So how much legal is it to use the credit card?
Okay.
And my second question is, in this modern world, we cannot avoid your accounts. You know, because without bank account, we cannot deal, make business or something like that. So, where we can spend the interest which we receive from the modern bank? Can you please answer these 2 questions?
Jazakallah khair, brother. Okay, Sheikh, we're going to hold on all the calls, inshallah, and we're just going to try to finish these questions. We had the second question for Brother Fareed, and he asked about praying in Makkah and Medina. If you miss one of the salahs there with the Imam, can you make qasr, or can you actually make dhuhr or the salah?
No, you
again?
pray qasr because you are a traveler. So whether you're in Mecca or Medina, whenever you are traveling, you shorten the 4 rak'ah prayer into 2.
Okay.
So if you miss the prayer, the full prayer in Mecca or Medina, and you want to make up for this prayer, you pray 2 rak'ah because you are a traveler.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. I think you answered his third question when we spoke about Ramadan, if you move from one country to another. So we go to his fourth question. He's speaking about his father traveling from one city to another. Does this constitute qasr again, especially in Ramadan?
If I recall correctly, from yesterday, he said that his father works in a city and he commutes daily or weekly. The answer would be, if your father owns a house in that second city, and he lives there, for example, for 5 days in his house, and he's not considered to be traveling because it is his house, he owns the house. So both cities would be considered to be his own. Okay. So he may not perform jam' and qasr, he may not shorten the prayers or join them unless he's traveling from one city to the other. Because on the way, this is a traveling distance. But in these cities, it's his own houses and he's living in them.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. We had a question from Abdul Rahman from the United Arab Emirates, and he was asking a question about whether Tarawih is compulsory or is it tahajjud. He just wanted some clarification on this.
Neither Taraweeh nor Tahajjud are considered to be compulsory. They're all voluntary prayers that you're rewarded if you do them, and there's no sin or burden on you if you do not. Having said that, I'm not encouraging people not to do them, because we are in deep need for any good deed that we could find here or there. And in fact, by far, Taraweeh and Tahajjud prayers are one of the greatest deeds that a person could offer during the month of Ramadan.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. We had a couple of questions from Brother Naveed, and his first question was regarding, he was saying he's having some hallucinations in his salah, and I think you asked him some question to clarify what he was saying. His advice?
If some of the people may get these hallucinations or whispering of Satan, because the closer you are to Allah Azza wa Jal, the more Satan is pulling you downwards. And because if you keep a distance away from him, then you're closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is why he always tries to give you whispering. Some brothers whisper about worldly things. For example, whenever he gets into prayer, he thinks about the groceries he has to buy. He thinks about his income, his savings, his stocks, and so on. Others think of the last thing they've done before joining the prayer. For example, if someone listens to music or watches movies, in prayer he gets these images and he hears these tunes. And the brother Naveed, he's saying that he is imagining Allah. You know, Satan comes to him and says, who created Allah Azza wa Jal? What about this? What about that? And whenever Satan comes to you and says these things, just say, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say that Allah is one, Allahu Samad. Say that Allah Azza wa Jal is the one that all humans and creatures go to Him for their needs. They ask Him and pray for Him. لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ. Does not beget and is not begotten. He has no father and he has no wife and he has no sons at all. He is one, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no one resembles Him, the Almighty. The minute you say this, it brings ease and peace to your heart, because now I believe that there's no one that is associated with Allah Azza wa Jal, so I'm not allowed even to think of those ideas. And whenever this idea comes to you, you always seek refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal by saying, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. And if you blow air with some spit on it on your left hand side, especially if you're on your own, but if someone is praying next to you in congregation, you're definitely not going to go spit on your left side. No, you spit on the under your left foot. But if you're on your own, you spit on your left side and say 3 times أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. This definitely helps you, inshallah.
Jazakallah. I hope that's cleared up the problem there for Brother Naveed. We have another question from him, and it's a bit of a poignant question regarding work and women. He said basically in our countries we have a high population of women, and they can really contribute towards society. He says, why do we not allow these women to work? Why can we not compete with other countries? That's the question he's asking.
Well, actually, no one said that women do not work. Women everywhere do the most important job Allah Azza wa Jal created for women. That is to take care of their husbands and the children. Imagine if you have a woman that is devoted to upbringing her child in the proper and Islamic way, educating him, enlightening him, teaching him manners, having him build up his body and his mind in a very civilized and modern way, and Islamic way, of course, above all, then we would have the perfect society. But when we leave this job and task to ignorant women or to maids, and then the woman is working 9 to 5 to do what? For few dirhams or dinars or riyals or here or there. I have no problem with women working, and I completely support this, providing they are isolated in a place where men are not where they are not exposed to men. I've seen this in companies. I've seen women sitting side by side to men, and they're Muslims, and then you ask them not to fall into sin. It's like putting fuel next to fire and say, please don't ignite. This is not possible. If it doesn't ignite, if nothing happens between the man and the woman, then there's something wrong with their hormones. The man should check his hormones, because this is human nature. And we've seen that presidents of the United States did this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So anybody from an Islamic country, from an Arab country, from a Muslim, a conservative country would definitely have to do this, if not now, next week, next month, next year. Satan has a lifetime to wait for you to sin. His CV runs back to Adam's. May Allah, peace and blessing be upon him. So he has a very big CV, long CV, and he's not in a hurry. If you're not going to sin today, you're going to sin next year. He's waiting for you. So women can work, but don't put women next to men. Give them their own institutions, give them their own offices, their own factories, their own hospitals, their own shopping malls. Let them feel free. Why do you have to put them under pressure and put men under pressure? And then you say, this is normal stuff. No, it's not normal stuff.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for that. The last question Brother Naveed had was one regarding when he said, we were expecting a child. I really wanted it to be a boy. He said, I was told by the doctor it was going to be a girl. I was very upset with my wife, basically. He said, subsequently it was a boy. He just wants to say, how does he ask Allah for forgiveness for this, for the oppression he had, especially on his wife?
Well, you have to ask Allah Azza wa Jal for forgiveness, first of all, because this is Allah's doing. It's not yours, it's not your wife. So a lot of us men blame the women for bearing girls. It's not up to them. It's not a multiple choice. It's not even by choosing this thing. This is something Allah Azza wa Jal has implanted in them. And the scientists say that it's the man responsible for having a boy or a girl. So you don't have to blame anyone except yourself. Second of all, you ask Allah for forgiveness, and Allah is most forgiving. But remember that whenever you have girls, that Allah's best creature, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had only 4 girls. He did not have boys. They all died in their infancy. And he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had 4 companion girls of his. So it's not an insult. On the contrary, it's an honor to have girls as your offspring.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. I'll ask the viewers to start ringing in now, inshallah. We've only got 2 questions left, so please start ringing in. And I'll ask the people in the studio, please let everybody through, inshallah. And we'll try to go through as many calls as possible. We had a call from Fatima just now, Sheikh. She was asking a question which you answered before, but she said the dua, the best dua for forgiveness, especially in this month of Ramadan.
Well, I think she's referring to the Arabic version of it. And that is Sayyidul Istighfar, where a person says, Allahumma anta rabbi wa ana abduk, wa ana ala ahdika wa wa'dika mastata'at, a'udhu bika min sharri ma sana'at, abu'u laka bi ni'matika alay, wa abu'u bi dhanbi faghfir li, innahu la yaghfiru dhunuba illa ant. Which means that, oh Allah, I am your slave and you are my Lord. I confess, Allahumma rabbi la khalaqtani wa ana abduk. You have created me and I'm your slave. And I am on the oath of trying to worship you to my best. I seek refuge in you from the bad things that I have done. And I admit and commit to my sins. But I also know that no one forgives the sins except you, so I seek your forgiveness. This is called the master of asking Allah for forgiveness. The top, the Cadillac of all supplications one can call Allah Azza wa Jal for.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Her second question was regarding the signs for Laylatul Qadr. What are the signs? How can we look for the signs for Laylatul Qadr?
Actually, there are signs that scholars say and indicate that it's a night of peace. So compared to the other nights, it's a peaceful night. You can feel this, but you cannot see it. And some people say that you have a window in the heavens and you can see, lanterns and so on coming down. No, this is nonsense. But you can tell that it was Laylatul Qadr, as the Prophet ﷺ described to us, that the following morning the sun rises without any dazzling light. So it's a little bit dim, though it's clear. Yet it's a little bit dim. It's not as strong as it usually comes. And this is only a sign that, probable signs. You cannot say, no, definitely it was last night. So to be on the safe side, the last 10 nights of Ramadan, you do your best in making qiyam, praying taraweeh, tahajjud, reciting the Quran, asking Allah Azza wa Jal for forgiveness, and reciting the dua that our Prophet taught Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. The Prophet ﷺ said, O Aisha, if it's Laylatul Qadr, say, Allahumma innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. It's very simple. Oh Allah, you are most forgiving and you love forgiveness and pardoning. So pardon my sins and forgive them. Allahumma innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for this. We had Bra from the United Arab Emirates, and he asked two questions. And his first question was about credit cards, basically, the permissibility of credit cards in Islam.
Nowadays, credit cards deal with riba. They're riba based, they're interest based, whether they are Visas, MasterCards, Diner Club, American Express, you name it, they have it. And it all revolves on you buy whatever you want with a certain limit of purchasing power, and you have 40 days to repay. If you repay in these 40 days, you're on the safe side. If you don't, 41st day, we're going to take 4% or 7%, depending on the company, interest. This is riba. Now, it's one of the two cases. Either you have to travel a lot and you have to have a credit card because you can't carry cash on you, yet you have in your bank account enough money to cover whatever you're going to buy. So in this case, then you may, if there's no other Islamic alternative, and there are lots of Islamic alternatives, but hypothetically speaking, there isn't any Islamic credit card. So if this is the case, you may get one and buy whatever you want and authorize the bank to immediately debit or take from your account whatever you've purchased. The second scenario, which is the most forbidden scenario, when you buy something and you don't have money to cover it, hoping that you will get something. This is forbidden because you are actually borrowing from this credit card and you are signing on the agreement before you obtain this credit card that, yes, I agree on paying riba if I am late 40 days from paying the money. One says that, okay, I have enough money. I'm not afraid. Your agreement is a sin by itself. And let's put it in another sin. If they say that if you are late 40 days from paying the money, the amount due, then this allows us to take your daughter or to take your wife. Would you say, yeah, I can do this because I'm going to pay before 40 days? No, so this is outrageous. Riba is the highest in the major sins, after just before shirk. It is one of the greatest and major sins in Islam, interests with the banks, with the credit cards, with loans and so on. And that is why Allah Azza wa Jal has waged war upon those who deal in riba.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for this. This is very clear. His second question, and actually before we go to the second question, we have Aswa from the United Arab Emirates. Aswa, are you with us on Ask Huda live, inshallah?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum.
Your question, please, brother.
Yes, I have one question. My wife had to do a MRL scan while she was fasting, and she had to get an injection. Is her fast accepted?
Okay.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu.
Okay, Sheikh. I just wanted to go to the second question of Bara, and basically he was saying, what do we do with the interest that we gathered, because we can't avoid interest in the bank accounts?
The brother was calling from the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and they have lots and lots of Islamic banks. So his excuse is unacceptable, because this is understandable if you tell me that you live in the States, for example, or if you live in Germany and there are no Islamic banking. But in the Emirates, you have lots of Islamic banks. So first of all, you have to put your money in an Islamic bank that does not deal with riba. But hypothetically speaking, if you don't have a place, as in the brother case, for example, let's say that he deposits all his money back in India, not in the Emirates or back in his home country, and they don't have any Islamic banking, then you should ask for from the bank to open a current account where no interest is deposited into your account. If all the accounts in these banks in your country deposit interest without your approval, then you have to calculate that. Take the money, the interest, that is, the riba. It's not interest. Interest is a good word.
Yes, it sounds good, yeah.
Yeah, but riba is the really scary thing. So let's always refer to interest as riba. Take the riba and spend it as form of getting rid of it, not as form of getting closer to Allah, not as form of charity. So where do I spend it? Should I play poker with it? No, of course not. No, you should take the money and put it to the needy. Those who are poor, your relatives, if they need money, someone is getting married, give it to him. Don't put it in mosques and don't put it in printing copies of the Holy Quran. Otherwise, you can spend it in means of charity as means of getting rid of this money.
So you don't expect any reward from it, basically? You're not giving it
no,
sadaqah?
no.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. We have Sufyan with us from Saudi Arabia. Sufyan, you're live on Ask Huda. Your question, please.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
My question is, we are in Saudi Arabia, one camp, we are staying in all people, we are teenagers, and one of our teenage guy, he knows a lot of verses of Quran, so he is offering Tarawih Salah every, so people are saying he is not practiced to offer the Tarawih Salah because he is wearing the normal trousers and pants, and they are saying this, we cannot offer Salah behind him. So we have we make a different jamaat in the same masjid, and we offer Tarawih according to wish not offering with
The line is breaking, but if I understand you correctly, say yes or no. You're talking about a camp where you work in and you have this brother that is, well, the cut is gone. I think that he's referring to someone who's leading the prayer, but I've lost touch because I think he's not talking through
Okay, we'll leave that, inshallah. If we can ask Sufyan to call in again, and please, brothers, do understand, and sisters, that we have so many people calling, that if you are going to call, please make sure your line is correct and safe. Please turn down the volume of your television because it does give interference to us. So we have Harun from Cairo on the line. Harun, are you there?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Harun, your question, please.
I have two questions actually.
Go on then.
I would like to know, say if you are sick and you asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if He cured your health, is it if He cured your health, you would pray, you would fast, say 2 days for Him curing your health. I would like to know, is that haram or is that halal? And I would also like to know if you eat camel meat, why is the reason that you have to make your wudu?
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Harun, for that question. We had a question, mashallah, from Brother Aswar from the UAE, and he asked about injections for his wife while she's fasting, some medicine.
This injection most likely is a colored material that is inserted into the bloodstream so that once they take the MRI, they could identify the place of whatever they're looking for. Inshallah, it's something good.
Okay.
This is not a form of food or drink. So scholars consider this to be as not nullifying the prayer, the fasting that is. So inshallah, your wife's fasting is correct and there's nothing wrong with that.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. We had Harun just now, and he just spoke about if you were sick and you made a vow to Allah. Does this vow hold weight? Do you have to actually fulfill the vow that you make to Allah?
There are two things that we should pay attention to. First of all, these vows, or what we call as nadhr, they are highly unrecommended. They are makruh. So you're doing something that does not please Allah Azza wa Jal. But having said that, if you take this vow and it's on a permissible thing or on a form of worship, then you have to fulfill it. Let's go back to part one. Why is it unrecommendable? Why does Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't like it? Simply because it comes as a form of bargaining. So and there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, do not take vows, don't make nadhr, because it's only a mean where Allah Azza wa Jal takes money from the stingy one who's not willing to spend. How is that? If I'm a stingy person, I never spend at the side of Allah Azza wa Jal. But when I'm sick, I say, oh Allah, cure me, and I will pay 2-3 sheep, I'll slaughter 3 sheep and I'll give them to the poor. And why didn't you do that before you got sick? So you're doing this as form of bargaining. You do this for me, I do that for you. Though that's why it's makruh, it's not recommendable. But once you commit yourself to do it, then you have to fulfill it. And Allah Azza wa Jal has praised those who fulfill their vows, yufuna bin nadhr. And it's something that is obligatory, and you have to do it providing it's permissible and it is, or it's a form of worship. But if someone says, it's a vow on me that I call my ex-girlfriend if this thing happens. No, this is completely out of the question. It's forbidden for you to fulfill it, and you have to pay kafarat, expiation of an oath. You have to feed 10 poor people.
Jazakallah Shaykh. Harun's second question was regarding camel meat, making your wudu nullified. He wanted to know the reason why, basically.
Well, there is no reason stated by the Prophet ﷺ. And it is very important for us to know that the verdicts in Islam are divided into two. One, logical verdicts, and this is the majority, where you can know why, or we're given the reason behind having this thing obligatory or having that thing forbidden, such as consuming intoxicants or gambling. In Islam, we're said that this is forbidden because Satan throws enmity and hatred in our hearts. And this is obvious. If you drink, you're going to fight with others and be abusive. And if you play gambling, if you gamble, you're going to either take all or lose all. And there's definitely going to be a grudge and hatred among the people. So this is logical. It's justified. We understand this. The other type of the verdicts in Islam are a mean of testing and examining your faith. So Allah tells you, as He told the companions at the very beginning of Islam, pray to Jerusalem. So they used to pray to Jerusalem for a period of time, that's 2-3 years. And then they were told to pray to Mecca, which is completely to the south, opposite direction, 180 degrees. Some of the hypocrites said, this is too much, Muhammad, peace be upon him, doesn't know where to pray. Once he goes to Jerusalem, now he's going to Mecca. This is a test. So why did it change? It's a test. Why does, if somebody burps, it doesn't nullify his wudu? But if he passes wind, it nullifies wudu, and though the gases are coming from the same stomach. This is something you have to accept as it is. Why do we perform wudu from eating camel's meat and we don't do this when we eat steaks, beef or lamb? This is the Sharia. Allah tells us you have to do this, so we comply without asking why.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. We're going to go to a quick break. Just to remind you of our telephone numbers again. 202 is the country code, 8555 248 and 8555 249. And we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The main concepts of Islamic economics, how is it different from the Western theories?
And the beauty about Islam is not that it just came as a religion to perfect the relationship of the servant of Allah with Allah, but also it came to perfect the relationship of the servant of Allah with others. The beauty about Islam comes and brings the interest of the public and the interest of the individual together.
How is Islamic banking different from the traditional banking system?
The concept of riba is that I lend you money, I give you a loan, in return that you give me back that loan with an extra at the top.
The idea of the stock market itself is halal or haram.
So these are the main conditions that the scholars put with regards of the share market.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Ask Huda. Sheikh, we have a very, very important email, and this is the reason I'm going to start with this email. It's from a brother, Zana Abdullah from Kurdistan, and he asks a very important question, some advice really. He says that many of the brothers in the locality, in my locality, have stopped going to the mosque. And the reason why is not because we don't want to pray in Jama'ah. He says because the community have a certain imam, and he really preaches that youth are the trouble of all our causes, and basically that the youth need to be put into certain corners and don't need to be expressed. We don't need youth to express themselves. He says, but nowadays, as you know, the youth is like, we hear these sayings, they're the strength of a country. And he doesn't call to us. He doesn't really want us to participate in a mosque. He says, what advice can you give me to be patient with these kind of preachers?
Well, actually, thank you, brother, for this question. And I'm afraid that it's not only in Kurdistan, it's elsewhere, where you are tested by Allah Azza wa Jal with an imam that talks in the east when you are in the west. And he never addresses your issues. But if the brothers in that community do not have an alternative masjid to pray in, which means that they'll pray on their own or they'll pray in their houses, then this is unacceptable. And they're sinful for doing this. Even if the guy is talking all the time about menstruation and post-bleeding, whatever, post-birth bleeding. Even if he's all the time constantly talking about these issues, they have to attend the prayer with the congregation. That's why it's called congregation, jama'ah. And your example in this is Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, who used to pray the congregation prayer behind one of the tyrants of all times, Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. And Hajjaj killed so many people. He killed Abdullah ibn Zubayr. He killed Sa'id ibn Jubayr. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr is the son of Zubayr ibn Awam. He's a companion. His father is a companion. His mother is a companion, Asma bint Abi Bakr. And his aunt was the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. He killed him. And he tore or broke part of the Kaaba by hitting it with stones while surrendering Mecca. And Sa'id ibn Jubayr was one of the masters of the Tabi'een, the followers of the companions. He killed him, cold-blooded. Yet, whenever he led the prayer, Abdullah ibn Umar, who is by far better than 10 of Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. He's the companion of the Prophet ﷺ and the son of Umar ibn Khattab. He used to pray behind him. So scholars say that you have to pray behind every bar and fajr, every good person and bad person, as long as he's a Muslim and his prayer is accepted by Allah Azza wa Jal, then you should pray behind him. His voice doesn't appeal to you, his knowledge is not sufficient to you, he talks about things that are boring or are political or unpolitical, you have to pray with him, behind him, unless there is, in the case that there is no other masjid. If there is another masjid, alhamdulillah, you can go and pray in any other masjid.
Jazakallah khair for that, Sheikh. We have another email question. Brother Abu Abdullah from Nigeria, and actually follows on from what you were speaking about of riba and interest. He says we have a very famous sheikh in our area, in our country. It's got a very, very large following. He says that in the last couple of weeks and months, he's been advocating the use of riba to Muslims, saying that this is something which the Muslims have misunderstood. This is something which the West has pushed upon us to help us. And many of the Muslims, especially those who are watching Al-Huda, are now starting using riba transactions and credit cards. He says, can you give some direct advice to our brothers in Nigeria?
Well, the advice is to all brothers who are watching this program, dealing with riba is one of the major sins in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, when identifying the 7 major sins of Islam, among them he said, riba. And in his night journey, Isra wal Mi'raj, he saw those who deal with riba as someone swimming in an ocean or a sea of blood, and whenever he comes to the shore, there's a man with big stones. He opens his mouth and he throws the stone into his mouth and to his stomach, and the guy goes back into the middle of the sea and swims back again, sea of blood. So he asked, who is this? He said, this is the guy that deals with interest. So it's a major sin. The consensus of all scholars, alhamdulillah, especially in the Islamic League, Muslims League in Mecca, that was about 30 years ago and 20 years ago and so on, they've all agreed, the scholars from all areas of the world agreed that riba is completely out of the question in its present form, not in the old form, in the present form, in the sense of banking.
That's his question. He says the Sheikh is speaking about gold and silver, and nowadays this doesn't exist. This is the excuse he's given.
Akhi, any guy that grows a beard nowadays is a sheikh. and this is a very big problem. You as a Muslim, whenever you have illness or you feel tired, you go to a specialist. You never go to a mechanic when you have stomachache. You never go to a dentist when you can't see well. You always go to a specialist. And it's not enough for a person in Nigeria, in Saudi Arabia, in whatever, that grows a beard and says, I'm a sheikh. Now we have people that are writing in newspapers and they call themselves men of literature. And they make fatwas and they talk to grand muftis and scholars that spend 30 or 40 years ridiculing them and telling them that this is not haram. They don't even know how to recite the Fatiha. They cannot even explain a single verse of the Quran. They don't have the ABCs of the Islamic knowledge. And yet, because they have open newspapers and magazines and they have the freedom to write whatever they want, they go and do whatever they want. This is unacceptable. So don't trust anyone who calls himself a sheikh. Don't trust me. I'm telling you that this is so and so. Go cross-examine whatever I say. Referred back to the scholars, Sheikh bin Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, Sheikh al-Albani, Sheikh al-Fawzan, all the great scholars of Islam. Open the old yellow books of the scholars of the 4 schools of thought and you'll find this in black and white. But don't depend on someone that looks nice or talks in a nice way and claims to be a scholar, and he is so far away from being a scholar because there is no one to challenge him.
He's leading up the path to hell, especially when it comes to riba.
Definitely.
Jazakallah khair for that, Sheikh. We have Muhammad from Saudi Arabia on the line. Muhammad, you're live on Ask Huda. Your question, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much for being patient with us, Muhammad. Your question.
First of all, it's my request, please, whenever if, somebody is lying, if you can take his call first and ask, the email afterwards, because I was on the, hold and you started, taking emails and,
Jazakallah khair, Muhammad. We will take that into consideration, of course.
Okay.
Your question, please.
Actually, my first question is, Alhamdulillah, I'm 28 years old, and Muslim from birth. But I've started practicing the Islam, in its spirit for the last 1.5 years. But sometimes, as the Sheikh once told that you should completely devote yourself. And, some people, they are, you can say them perfectionist or, obsessive. And maybe I'm one of them. And if, sometimes I think if you do not devote yourself, so you shouldn't do, you are, completely out of track. In spite of this, I do try, whatever I can, but sometimes I'm completely out of track. So please, advise on this, that what is, regarding, relating to the obsession or, because, obsession sometimes is a disease.
Absolutely.
And second answer, what about the zuhud in Islam? Is it obligatory?
The what?
And the zuhud,
zuhud.
That, and is it?
I think we've missed Brother Muhammad's second question, but speaking about zuhud, we have Hajira from the United Arab Emirates. Hajira, you're live on Ask Huda. Your question, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I have 3 questions, please.
Okay.
First one is about prayer Tarawih. There is difference of opinion about that some scholars say it should be 20 rak'ah, the others say it's 8 rak'ah. Could you please clarify which argument is more authentic? My second question is about if a person broke his fast in Ramadan before having no sufficient knowledge about Islam. Now, does he have to perform expiation for those broken fasts now when you got the knowledge, or Tawbah will be enough? And my third question is about if a person took a loan from the bank, again, same in the time of the ignorance, what he should do now with this interest that he still have to pay to the bank after having repented for that sin.
Okay. Barakallah fiki. That was Hajira from UEA. Brother Muhammad from Saudi Arabia. A very valuable point, Muhammad. We do try to take all the calls as soon as possible. If I don't get any call from the studio, I look at my emails, but usually we try to get to all the calls, so we do apologize. Honestly, we really do. And we ask you to stick with us, inshallah. Brother Muhammad's first question, he's asking about that he's been practicing for some time now, just a short period, and sometimes he says he finds himself very obsessive. If he's not obsessive, he doesn't do the act altogether. He says, what sort of advice can you give him on this kind of attitude or behavior?
Well, first of all, you should always follow the Sunnah. If you follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, you're on safe grounds. If you're not, you're in the middle of the ocean. You're on your own. By following the Sunnah, I mean that you should not go to extremes. Always follow the middle path, which is the path of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet used to fast, other than Ramadan, of course, and at the same time, he used to break his fast. So some days he fasts, some days he doesn't. He used to pray not all of the night, but different parts of the night, in the very beginning, in the middle, or at the very end. So you should always try to practice this and have it easy going. Obsession by itself is good because it means that you are sincere and you want to make your ibadah, your worship, complete and full. And this is good. But if it exceeds the limit, then it becomes whispering of Satan. And it becomes a negative obsession that may take you out of the right path. So as far as you're trying and struggling and doing your best to follow the Sunnah, this obsession is considered to be rewardable at the side of Allah Azza wa Jal, and you are rewarded for just trying.
Jazakallah khair. His second question before, unfortunately, he got cut off, was about zuhud, about abstaining. What place does this have in Islam, and is it something recommended?
Well, zuhud, scholars say, is having life, having dunya, having worldly items in your hand and not in your heart. So some people think that zuhud is to be poor, to look poor, to live poor, and not to work at all. And whenever you see these people, like the Sufis and the old Sufis, the modern time Sufis now are driving in their Mercs and Beamers, and they gather money from Allah knows where. Now I'm talking about the old Sufis who used to think that life is just staying in a corner of a masjid, performing ibadah and making dhikr, and that's it. People spend money on them as form of charity. No, this is not zuhud. Zuhud is not to allow world to enter your heart and control your life, in the sense that if you're a manager, if you are a businessman, zuhud is to have transactions, to buy and sell, to be rich, but at the same time, this does not conflict with prayer. So whenever the prayer for dhuhr is called, you're in the first row. You would not say, well, I have to sign these papers, I have to wait, I have a meeting. No, you have to leave whatever you're doing and go for prayer. You do not cut off your next of kin. You do not stop seeing your mother or father or your relatives. No, zuhud is to not be possessed with this life and these material issues.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Before we go to the other questions, we have Abu Abdurrahman from Saudi. You're live on Ask Huda. Could I have your question, please?
Yes, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Sheikh, my question is, me and my wife, we have been married for about 8 years. We're trying to have kids and we're having difficult time. And we have a question about the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, because we have read in Sahih Bukhari that the Prophet used to take the reasons in the fact that in the Battle of Uhud, he wore the armored clothing. But when it came to the Sahaba practicing azl at his time, he told them why are they doing it, and he questioned why they're doing it. And he told them that Allah will create every soul that He's going to create until the Day of Judgment. So sometimes we see that he took the reasons and told the companions to follow the reasons, but when it came to creation of human beings or having children, he actually questioned their act. So our question is, should we go and to artificial means of getting children, like getting in vitro fertilization or something similar? And would that be against the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ?
Okay. Jazakallah khair. That's Brother Abu Abdurrahman from Saudi. We're going to return to Sister Hajira from UEA, and she had the first question she said was about Taraweeh. What is the Sunnah in Taraweeh? Is it 11? Is it 20? She needed some understanding on this topic.
Well, we've addressed this issue before and just put it in a nutshell. The Prophet ﷺ never exceeded 11 rak'ahs as narrated by al-Mu'mineen Aisha. In Ramadan or in other months as well. Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him, said that the Prophet ﷺ used to pray 13 rak'ahs. So this is an extra of 2. And the Prophet ﷺ himself, when was asked by a nomad, by a Bedouin, about night prayer, he told him night prayer is 2 rak'ahs, 2 rak'ahs. You pray night prayers in 2s, and if you fear Fajr, then make witr of 1 rak'ah. And he did not tell this man, who's a nomad, who's a Bedouin, that you have to limit this to 11, which means that if it is not permissible for us to add more than 11, the Prophet would have notified the man and told him, listen, it's 2, but don't exceed 11. This means that the best thing for you to do is to pray 11. But there is no harm, none whatsoever, in adding more than 11. As the Prophet himself ﷺ used to add to that, after praying 11 rak'ahs, he used to pray 2 rak'ahs sitting down, which means that he prayed night prayer 13 rak'ahs, as Ibn Abbas said, and so on. So whether you pray 8 or you pray 20, it's all the same. I recommend that you stick with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in praying 11 rak'ahs only, but if you add, it's just okay.
And if you're in the mosque, for example, praying behind the imam, is it recommended to stay with the imam and complete what he completed?
Yes, unfortunately, some of the brothers in Medina or Mecca, for example, when they have 2 imams, they pray with one of them. And they neglect the other, because saying that we will not exceed more than 11, but then they lose the reward of praying the whole night. So when you're praying behind the imam, pray the whole thing. And this is the doing of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, may Allah have mercy on him. When he used to pray in Haram, he used to pray the full 23 rak'ahs with the imam, with the 2 imams. And he would not approve of those praying half of it and leaving just to pray 11.
Jazakallah khair. We have Harun from Saudi Arabia. Harun, you're live on Ask Huda.
Hello.
Hello, Harun.
Hello.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Your question, Harun.
My question is, I heard that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to eat from 3 fingers. So how can we eat rice from 3 fingers?
Okay.
I have a question. I can eat the bread with 3 fingers, but rice, so clear the.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. That's Harun from Saudi Arabia. Sheikh, if we can carry on with some of Hajira's questions.
Okay.
And she was saying, before having knowledge of fasting, somebody who's breaking fast, past Tawbah, what can that person do? Do they have to redo the fasting?
Of course. They have to redo the fasting, make up for the days they've missed. But she was asking about the expiation, that she has to feed a poor person. The authentic opinion of scholars is that she does not. And this is the opinion of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen. There's no evidence from the Prophet ﷺ saying that you have to do this. So we cannot say, well, other scholars say you have to, because we need the evidence.
That's right. Yeah.
And as long as we don't have the evidence from the Prophet ﷺ, we can't make this obligatory among people.
Jazakallah khair. Her third question was again about somebody being in ignorance and not knowing about interest and loans, taking a loan. Now what do they do with this loan?
Well, if the bank is friendly and they can negotiate with the bank and call him for Islam and tell him you have to fear Allah, then that's okay. But unfortunately, the bank says you have to pay. And if you don't, we're going to toss you and throw you in jail. So in this case, you have to pay back the interest. But in some cases, if you, instead of paying it over a period of 5 years and you pay it all at once, this reduces the interest. Then you have to try to reduce the interest by collecting money from your friends or whatever, and then give it to them in one go, so that you reduce the amount of interest.
Jazakallah khair. We have Abu Abdurrahman, and he asked a very, very difficult question in his situation. He said him and his wife have been trying to have a child for 8 years, he says now. He says he knows the sunnah of the Prophet. Sometimes he would use means to protect himself, like he talked about armor, and means to get to the end, basically. He says, what about us? Can we use means like in vitro fertilization to have children? Is this following the sunnah?
The brother said that the Prophet ﷺ questioned them when they did azl. Azl is a form of contraceptive. And I don't want to go into details, we're live. But the brothers understand this. He questioned it, but he did not tell them that don't do it. He told them that even if it was spilled on a rock, and Allah Azza wa Jal decreed that a son has to come out of it, the son would come out of the rock. So he just connected them to Allah Azza wa Jal, trying to tell them that bearing children is a sunnah and is something that is highly recommendable by Allah and by the Prophet ﷺ. But he did not deny them. He did not tell them, do not use azl. He let it be. Now, in the brother, in Abu Abdurrahman's case, I know this is a very sensitive issue, brother Abu Abdurrahman, and I cannot say without emotions that, no, it's okay, wait another 20 years. But at the same time, this is Islam. This is religion. I cannot give you something without believing in it, because I have to look into the Quran and the Sunnah and add the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages, and come with a verdict that suits all, not tailored to you. So the scholars say, in your case, as of this form of fertilizing, if the sperms are from you, of course they are, and the embryo, I think it's called, I'm very bad with scientific terminologies, is from your wife, and the scholars, the majority of scholars say this is okay, under trustworthy supervision. Only Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, may Allah have mercy on him, said no, it's not okay, because who guarantees to me that these sperms are mine?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How can I make sure that it was not confused or mixed or replaced with someone else? And the same thing goes with the egg of the woman, and so on. So Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, may Allah have mercy on him, said there is so much at stake here, and I cannot give a verdict of saying yes, it's allowed, because the cons are more than the pros. And therefore, it's up to you. I cannot tell you yes or no. I gave you the whole picture, and I know how you feel. At the same time, I know how sensitive this issue is, and it's not an easy thing to do. If you have an institute, and he's calling from the Emirates of Saudi Arabia.
He was calling from Saudi.
From Saudi Arabia. Probably there you will find trustworthy institute with trustworthy people that will make triple sure that everything goes accordance to plan and no mixed ups, inshallah. And in this case, inshallah, you have no problem.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh, for all your answers. We're already run out of time. I can't go through any more questions. Needless to say that tomorrow, inshallah, bi-idhnillah, will be returned, inshallah. And just to remind you that we have Inspirations Next by Sheikh Mu'tasim Al-Hamidi. So stay tuned, inshallah. Again, I leave you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.